I love this story because I love when people get their comeuppance. So the owner of the Miss Universe pageant just filed for bankruptcy only a week after there was this huge controversy because the pageant included 2 trans male to female contestants in their running. They did not win. It included Miss Portugal and Miss Netherlands. These are both biological male competitors. The winner was from Nicaragua. She is a female, so thankfully they didn't get the winning title. But it was a huge controversy that these people were allowed to compete in the first place, given that this is another women's space that is getting invaded in the name of trans inclusivity. And a former judge on Miss Universe named Emily Austin did an interview recently where she suggested that the bankruptcy is in part a result of all of this controversy. So Emily Austin says the controversy over transgender contestants was not merely a social issue, but a contributing factor to the pageant's economic downfall. And guys, if you didn't know, the owner of Miss Universe is a trans person, her himself. This is another biological male who identifies as a woman that took over the pageant, which used to belong to Donald Trump back in the 90s until 2015 when he sold it under political pressure. When he made comments about immigration, they wanted to cut ties with him.
See, this
with
is
NBC, so he had to sell it. But ironically, all of these people saying, you know, this would have never happened under Trump's leadership when he owned the pageant. He did celebrate including trans competitors in the pageant at the time, back in 2012.
When I say I don't understand the progressive wheel, I don't understand. When is this? So immigration is bad, but trans is good. So should Donald Trump's comments on trans inclusion have superseded his comments on immigration? I don't know. There are no rules. They just make them up as they go
Well,
on.
as he stepped into the world of politics, he probably didn't have the ability to keep that going anyway.
There's a $20 super chat here from Dreamcast Knight says, as Razor Fist would say, go woke, go broke, get woke, then croak. Yep. Yeah.
I heard a Scottish newscaster say, get woke, go broke. So Trump repeatedly celebrated the inclusion of transgender women competing in the Miss Universe pageant. That included a 23-year-old transgender woman named Jenna Talakova participating in a Canadian pageant. And he also praised the winner of Miss USA, Olivia Culpo, for saying that transgender women should be allowed to compete. So this has been going on for a lot longer than people realize. This is over a decade now in the making, and somehow we're still shocked. So I wanted to show you a video of the 2 trans competitors.
I can't stop watching this.
Miss Netherlands and Miss Portugal holding hands in an Instagram video, just dunking on all of the female competitors.
Hold, please. Turn the volume up.
Caption, 2 men wear woman face at Miss Universe. Yikes, right? So they made this video obviously to show solidarity in their identity because they don't want to just blend in with the rest of the competitors.
Feels like
they want this to work in their favor.
Yeah, it feels like they're
to get
laughing at the
ahead in
women.
these competitions. And I don't doubt for a second that they got their titles in the first place for that reason.
Courier626 says, Happy Thanksgiving Eve. Well, thank you.
Oh yeah, it's Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Yeah, it feels like they're doing that to just to rub in everyone's face that they were able to make it there and they're being allowed to compete.
So
Right.
Emily Austin said, I think the outrage about a trans woman coming to Miss Universe and preaching bringing power back to women couldn't be more of an oxymoron. But the newscaster that was debating with her about this said, well, it's all about the looks, right? So if they're able to look like women and look like the rest of the pageant competitors with cosmetic surgery, with makeup, airbrushing, outfits, makeup, all of these things, then what is to stop them from competing? This is a competition about appearances, right? But she maintained that actually your answers to interview questions have a lot to do with whether you will win. And if you're telling stories about your life, having grown up and lived as an adult man, how do you have anything to say about women? How do you have anything to relate to with the women watching? And also, it's not just about looks, because this is about celebrating women's beauty.
Right.
It's not just like, you know, we can trot out a blow up doll on the stage, and if we decide that it looks better than the rest of the competitors, then they can win. That doesn't follow.
You know, there's a Miss Black America. Like, what if does that mean if a guy can just be a woman at a competition, does that mean that somebody could just throw on some makeup and become Miss Black America? Is that not the same thing? I ask you.
I'm sure that Miss Black America was invented because of discrimination, right?
It says the Miss Black America Beauty Contest is a competition for young African American women. The pageant has garnered the support of artists, activists, and performers, including Stevie Wonder, Curtis Mayfield, and Oprah Winfrey. Over 40 years. In 2009, the pageant had a kickoff in Washington, D.C. to rebrand the competition. The first teen winner, was Miss Ashley Anglin. The first runner-up teen was Monet Jackson, a resident of Mitchellville, Maryland, and Destiny Welch. So this has got a long history. And if what they're saying is that all it takes to be a woman and live a woman's lived experience is to put some makeup on in a cocktail dress, then I guess why would it be any different to slap some makeup on and become Miss Black America? Does that idea sound ridiculous to you? Because it sounds ridiculous to me.
Well, yeah, we were also talking about how technically Mary couldn't enter the Miss Universe pageant, but Brett, if you dressed up as a woman, could.
I mean,
unironically, Brett is more eligible for Miss Universe than I am, because if you're under 5'3", you may not compete.
I just squeak by on the height requirement at 5'5".
Brett is also more likely to get a role playing a Disney princess at the theme parks because of his height. So a biological male unironically has a better chance at winning this title than I do.
Than a woman.
That's crazy. Quite ironic, but I'm glad they at least chose a biological woman to win in the end.
There was like a mock article that says it said like Miss Universe, at least it's a real woman. It wasn't. It was,
what more do you want?
Yeah.
And all of these pageants have been criticized for years for being shallow.
Yeah.
And this is the ultimate testament to that.
Yep.
It is shallow.
Like what, guys? It's just
you
about
can just
love.
dress up as a woman and be considered one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Ian. We appreciate your Roberto Jr. impression.
Always.
So I want to know what you guys think of this particular take. This says, my most conspiratorial position is that the proliferation of plastic surgery and fillers, buccal fat removal, and sharper jaws amongst even young girls was latently socially designed to make trans less distinguishable from biological women. What do you guys think?
I think that I don't know if it was necessarily done on purpose, but I think that that's an unintended consequence to make it harder to distinguish between them.
Well, the trends in makeup certainly look more and more like drag queens every day.
Yeah.
Somebody in the
just too
chat
much
is
makeup.
slandering me and saying I'm 5'4". I am 5'5", okay? Not 5'4".
Facts.
That's a
I am
huge
5'4".
difference.
Well,
There you
even
go.
if he were
were taller
5'4",
than
he
me.
would
I
still be able to compete.
I
So
would still
it doesn't
qualify.
matter.
And
It's a
Mary
touchy subject.
would be out of luck because they have a height requirement but not a gender requirement for Miss Universe.
One day, we'll see you up on that stage.
I do believe that plastic surgery plays a role in this now, because people are starting to generally look like, when you get to a certain level of fame and money and you can afford to have work done, they're all starting to look kind of alike anyways.
Yeah.
It's not good. It's probably not good for society. It's also not good because it actually creates it's like unintended classicism, where it's like, then what people believe is beautiful will actually be gatekept by money, even more than it already is by those who can afford the right beauty products, the right this and that, right? It will be even more of a barrier to entry for the average person to be considered what is thought of as classically beautiful by today's standards, which are very different from what beauty standards were even 10, 20 years ago. Like, you don't hear a lot about the girl next door nowadays. I don't hear a lot of people talking about the concept of the beautiful girl next door. Everyone wants to look fake,
right?
It seems like.
Yeah. Like, have you noticed Ariana Grande and Kim Kardashian kind of are looking more and more alike every, like, passing year?
And less like they used to look. Which I think everyone prefers what Kim Kardashian used to look like
100%.
and what Ariana Grande used to look like when they still had an ethnicity. But yeah, they just don't look like real people. And trans people have talked about this. If we're going to listen to their stories, they say that these cosmetic surgeries are seen as a status symbol among trans people that makes you a real woman eventually if you are able to afford these tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cosmetic work.
Right.
And it's beginning to be seen as a status symbol for biological women as well.
Yeah.
It's like you have to have probably tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars of work done to be considered passable as
The
a
difference
trans
is
woman.
they can get insurance to cover it. Biological women can't.
It really does feel every day that, like, you ladies are just having all your space, like because the counter argument to this would be, like, if the girl can compete with the guys, they would let the girl compete with the guys in sports. But they shouldn't. But we agree that we shouldn't be letting biological men compete with women in sports because it's not fair to them. It's like everywhere you guys turn, you end up having society tell you that you're wrong for wanting spaces to yourself. Oh, you want a locker room to yourself? What are you, Hitler?
I think, like, if your only rebuttal to the argument for women or for MTF trans women competing in sports with biological women is that there's a physical disadvantage to the women, that's really not a good enough explanation, because you're not saying, like, the truth, which is that this is lunacy. And then it goes into other areas like you know, the dressing rooms, the bathrooms, competitions that are like video games, chess, and a beauty pageant even, where there's no physical disadvantage. It's just insanity that we shouldn't have accepted in the first place.
Even
and also,
video
like,
games has reaction time, and there's differences still.
Sure, yeah, but then you'd have to...
men on average are taller.
Then you'd have to open a whole other can of worms, which is that there are mental differences, there are neurological differences between men and women, which is not accepted by the mainstream. But men stopped having their own spaces long before this ever happened. So in a way, it's sort of seen as a form of retribution on women for invading men's spaces.
Boy Scouts is bad, Girl Scouts is
right.
good.
Like, look at what happened to Boy Scouts.
You're not allowed to have, like, the gentlemen only clubs, like men's only spaces now, right? Which used to be a thing, which are generally now looked down upon. And women were always like, well, why? They actually pushed this forward, right? They're like, well, why can't we be there? What, is it like a nagging wife who wants to be there with you all the time? Like, why can't we be there?
Yeah.
And the guy's like,
and so
sometimes I need
instead
space to
of
myself.
men standing up for their spaces all those decades ago when that needed to happen, we let the women invade men's spaces. We act like men and women are the same and can do all the same stuff and have all the same interests and the same methods of socialization, which is not true. And then we end up in this situation.
There's a Jeff Dye bit where he talks about men and women are different, and the problem is, he's like that's what I like about it. He's like, the thing I love most about women is that they're not dudes. And says, like, he's like, let's be honest, all of you that came here that called a babysitter tonight, you called a woman, not because you're sexist, but because you're not dumb. Like, that's
right.
the point, right? Men and women are different, and that is just something that society seems... It's like an omnipresent problem where they have to constantly struggle with this notion that differences isn't necessarily bad. They have to constantly look at the idea that being different at all could ever be something that's just not bad, but actually good. It's good that you're not exactly like everyone else. Yeah, it's stupid. The whole thing is very stupid. You're kind of right. We are kind of paying for all of the spaces that were invaded 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when we started trying to pretend like there was no difference between all of us in the name of squashing the patriarchy.
Yeah, and not all, but very specific ones, right? Because we don't see a bunch of female plumbers and construction workers and, you know, like doing all these hardcore construction jobs. It's
ones
just
that do
the fun spaces.
The ones that do end up making bank on like TikTok because it's such a it's like a unique trend to be like a woman who does like like women who work blue collar jobs make like really good followings on TikTok and on Instagram because it's its own meta, right? It's like its own.
Right.
If you look at it though, working class men and women are still very much gender segregated by career.
Yeah.
That is not the case for more like information desk jobs. So feminism's push to put women in the workplace was always about the upper middle class women, not the rest of them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think that there's any fixing this because it's only gotten worse in the last 20 or 30 years. There would have to be such a hard reset on the way we, as a society here in the West, look at the world now that I don't see that happening, and the next generation has already bought into this whole hog.
Right.
Women need to stop taking birth control.
Like women have bought into this, like the sexual revolution, like you would say that men are passive about it because they're getting what they want out of these situations. So they don't have to worry about it. Women are having their spaces invaded, and because women are people pleasers, they won't speak up. We had the lady who refused to do the pool tournament recently, and that was like a big deal because one woman finally stood up and said, I'm not doing this. There was a thing where like, I don't know if it was Leah Thomas, but there was like pool, like actual swimming competitions have open divisions, and like no trans people competed in it. They only wanted to compete in the women's division.
It's about proving a point. Yeah.
And this is also on us as a society for taking identity and celebrating it, like making awards and giving out things just because somebody has a unique place in the social spectrum. Meaning, like when Pride Month was created, when Pride Month became a thing, it made sense, at least for a little bit, because societally they were so looked down upon by so many people for so long. That type of bravado I actually think of as quite American, to look in the face of somebody telling you you're wrong and saying, I'm going to live my life the way that I want to. I at least saw that as somewhat making sense a long time ago. Now it's moved so far beyond that. We don't just accept that pride is something that can come out of conflict, but we're encouraged to have pride almost to a fault all the time, and to accept that everything that we do and say should be 110% looked at upon with praise by everyone, which isn't realistic. It's not how the real world works. And the West has pushed further and further into this belief system, into this ideology, because it falls straight into the Marxist category, where it's all looking up at the white dudes and spitting in their face and saying, we revolt upon you and all of the Western values. And you're not going to get away from this anytime soon. It's coming out of social media. It comes out of college. It comes out of parents who are now having children in these respects. And I don't know, like
you're always asking, like, how do we fix this? And when I look at this problem,
this is the fall of the West.
The only solution comes from individuals conscientiously objecting, and this is difficult, but it means women need to stop pumping their bodies full of birth control. Because we have millions of women in this country walking around in phantom pregnancy for the sexual freedom and the career freedom that it gives them. And men are also in favor of it because it gives them free sex. Yes. No consequence sex. So everyone has their special favorite thing that birth control gives them. And it's time to give that up. And or else this is going to keep getting worse, because flattening the differences between the sexes was an idea that a lot of people thought was noble, but we've seen the consequences. It's time to stop.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I'm curious, like, what about the women who aren't on birth control and who still sleep around and just have kids left and right? Do we get rid of welfare for that at that point? Because that also kind of incentivizes women to be careless, like I said, as well.
This is the destruction of the West, in which the entire power structure is set up to divide men and women, right? So there is no fault divorce. There's the fact that women are incentivized to let the state raise their children. There is no fixing this. In my opinion, there's no way policy-wise to fix this because the culture is so far gone. I know that's a little bit doomer.
That's why you need cultural solutions, though. That's the argument.
What would the solution though be for Miss Universe banning trans contestants? I feel like that would be
Miss
like
Trans
the final.
Universe.
You know.
Shocking. It's a crazy idea. Miss Trans Universe. Then the best thing about
You
that idea
mean
is
RuPaul's Drag Race?
the best part about that idea is I understand that their argument is I want to be seen as a woman. I want, I feel inherently
It won't be enough.
that I'm a woman, so therefore I want to be seen as a woman. But if you actually create a space specific for them, that allows them to have topics and pageant concepts that are related specifically to their view of the world. Shocking, right?
If you take what they say at face value, that sounds like a nice solution, but these people live for validation. There is no bounds to like the validation that they need. So they're going to continue doing what they do.
And men are over here just like, well, they're not winning our strongman competition, so I guess we'll just go along with this because there's no incentive for us to push back. If the men must think like, look, if the women don't care, why should we care? Like if you're a politically uninitiated
there's no
person,
incentive for men to push back because obviously their spaces are not being invaded in the same way.
Yeah.
And there's no incentive for the women in these competitions to push back because they know that men aren't going to be on their side. So, and also it's just not in women's nature to push back on the groupthink. So
so they will fall in line and they will have their locker rooms.
this is the consensus.
And the colleges will threaten them if they try to complain about spaces in the locker rooms or in their dorms. And it's I guess as like a libertarian, I'm like, look, if this is what you're in policy, you're not pushing back against it. What am I supposed to say, right?
Yeah.
Like, am I supposed to advocate for you if you can't if you're not willing to advocate for yourself?
What about when it gets to the point where your tax dollars are paying for stuff? Like
I don't think we should be getting taxed at all, anyways. So.
I agree with you, but at the end of the day, the fact is that we are paying for like chest binders in public schools to be given out to young girls, which is a far more common thing, than people realize. I mean, it happens even in the Midwest and like in conservative areas.
It's enough black pill for today.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.